Hello, everyone. This is A Lil Spooky, a podcast about things that scare us just a little bit. Things like aliens, cryptids, conspiracies, or when you're at a funeral and you fart and a little bit comes out. My name is Everett.
And I'm Colleen.
How are you doing, Colleen?
Good. I have been thinking, like, we live in Minnesota. We live in northern Minnesota, like the Minnesota-iest part of Minnesota.
Sure.
Do you ever feel like you're not Minnesotan enough?
I mean, I didn't grow up in Minnesota, so yes.
Yeah, but we've been here for like a solid, 6 years?
Sure.
7 years?
Yeah.
And I still feel like a Wisconsinite behind enemy lines. Like I've been practicing my Minnesota accent. Like I don't speak enough Minnesotan. I've never had tater tot hot dish.
Oh, I have.
In Minnesota?
No, in Wisconsin. They're really not that different, Colleen.
They are, because Minnesota belongs to the Norwegians. And
Let's not get racist here.
The Minnesota accent is far different from the Wisconsin accent.
Okay.
Minnesota, you got like, oh, it's cold in a dog's nose out there, isn't it? Heavens to Betsy.
I mean, it's the same thing in Wisconsin.
No, because Wisconsin is like, oh, that's a little pricey now.
It's literally the same thing. You just want to pitch higher.
The point is, I realize that I think I don't feel Minnesotan because I grew up in Wisconsin, and Wisconsin, as everybody knows, belongs to the Germans.
Are you saying you want to move back to Wisconsin? Our families would be very happy.
No, I don't want to move back to Wisconsin. But I do want to talk about something German. You see what I did? Did my segue?
Can I guess what?
Yeah.
Christmas is over, so not Krampus or Belschnickel. I hope it doesn't have to do with World War II. Fingers crossed.
Today, we are going to discuss the Doppelganger. Yeah, I'm sorry to anybody who's even remotely German. I just felt like I kind of had to do it that way.
I speak a little German. Ich spreche nur ein wenig Deutsch.
Doppelganger.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I am fascinated by the subject. It actually scares me a lot, so.
Yeah, and okay. Let me start with like a quick complaint as I start all things in my life.
Okay.
I started doing research on this bad boy, and I was excited because, wouldn't you know it, people on the internet have the darnest stories. But when I did the Google, the only thing, like the first things that come up are, who's your celebrity doppelganger?
Yeah.
Who's your doppelganger?
That's not surprising.
Could you ever meet your doppelganger? And I'm like, can we call this something else, please? Do you have to call somebody who vaguely looks like you your doppelganger? I don't think you understand the severity.
Well, and also that's just the misuse of the term, isn't it? I'm sure you'll get into that, but I don't think that's what a doppelganger even is.
Correct. Well, yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Unless the person that vaguely looks like you is
trying to steal your identity.
Yeah, even then. But one thing that I just thought was stupid. According to Wikipedia, doppelganger refers to a biologically unrelated lookalike. But for the paranormal sense of the word, they want you to use the phrase twin stranger.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Isn't it? That'd be like me naming myself Everett and then deciding that your name is Jimothy.
That's kind of what a doppelganger would do, right?
No, you don't know anything about doppelgangers. Well, I'm here to educate you.
Tell me.
Okay, a doppelganger is... Doppelganger is, in all senses, a twin stranger.
Well, yeah, but I mean, sure.
Okay, you tell what is your understanding of what a doppelganger is?
So obviously, and like anyone that isn't even remotely familiar with the term doppelganger, it's someone that looks like you. But in my mind, there's always something a little more nefarious involved. So what I always think of with a doppelganger is it's a creature or alien or being of some kind that takes on your appearance and tries to get rid of you to take your spot. So basically like trying to steal your life.
Yes. I mean, that could be one sense.
Sure, but it's always going to be someone that looks like you.
Yes.
That is not related to you.
Yes. In fact, I wouldn't say they look like you. They are you.
Right. Yeah. A copy.
Yes. The concept of a doppelganger has essentially, it spans centuries and cultures.
Mm-hmm.
There are dozens and dozens of cultures across all time periods that have had different forms of what you might interpret as a doppelganger.
Yeah.
Like in ancient Egypt, a ka was a physical double of a person that had the same memories and feelings as you. So it's basically you twice.
Like almost like a parallel universe.
Right. It's like the idea of a person being in two places at once, but that person is not conscious of the fact that they're also in the other location. You know Sabrina, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, in the last season where she's the queen of hell, but she's also in the regular world?
Yeah.
That's essentially a ka. She has all of the same memories and feelings, but she's in two completely separate locations, living two completely separate lives.
So it's like if you're a cell and you split in mitosis, like it's literally the same thing. It's just you've now created two beings, like one butted off of you, but you're the same.
Yeah, that's kind of how I understood it.
Sure.
Norse mythology, I don't know how to pronounce this word. Vardoger
God.
is a ghost devil that can be seen doing a person's actions in advance.
Oh.
So kind of like a premonition.
Okay. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. In Finnish mythology, the same concept is called a first comer, but in Finnish, I'm not even going to try that word.
Right.
And it's essentially the same concept. It's like a premonition of what you are going to do before you do it. And in British, Cornish, and Norman folklore, there's a version of the doppelganger called the Anku.
Oh, I think I've heard of this.
Well, in all the reading that I did about it, there's such a wide variation as to what the Anku actually is that it's either the Grim Reaper or a doppelganger. But either way, it's like a harbinger of death. It basically is an omen that you are about to die, or it's coming to take you to death.
Right.
To the afterlife.
Okay.
But there's tons more in a bunch of other cultures, but you get the gist. All over the world, the idea of you, but not you.
It's very uncanny and unnatural, unsettling, and just creepy.
Yes. It's interesting to me that completely unrelated cultures would have such similar mythology that it makes me think, what experiences were people having?
Well, and I don't think it's that strange, really, just because, everyone is afraid of the same things instinctually. So if someone looks like you, like you're immediately going to be unsettled by that because it's like an exact copy. That's just very odd.
Well, I actually read in an article, one of those dumb articles about celebrity doppelgangers, that there's like a 1 in 135 chance that somebody on Earth looks pretty much exactly like you.
Just playing odds, like...
Yes, but I mean, we're not talking exact
right,
copy,
but just looks like passably like you.
Right.
Right.
I
would believe that. I mean, it's probably coming from like Vanity Fair, one of those types of websites.
I don't remember. I mean, I glanced. Yeah. I mean, in my case, it's a 100% chance that there's someone out there who looks exactly like me.
Don't dox your twin.
And that would be my twin. Her address is... Just kidding. Okay, for the sake of this podcast, I'm going to go with the traditional, modern, kind of accepted definition of a doppelganger, and that is somebody who is you, but not.
Right.
It's not you projecting in another location. It's
something else that looks like you.
Yes.
Yeah.
These doppelgangers are not always seen by the person themselves, but they might be seen by family members or friends or somebody else instead, which kind of goes back to that Norse mythology. Perhaps a family member sees somebody doing something before it actually happens.
Or it's just they're noticed by friends and family, and then that person brings it up to you, but like, oh, I never did that, or I never said that.
Yeah. So when seen by somebody else other than the person themselves, this is going to get confusing. When the person whose doppelganger it is.
Yeah. The subject. When the subject is being copied.
Yes, when the doppelganger is seen by somebody else, generally it seems to almost always be an omen of death. that person you just saw is going to die in the near future. It seems.
Wait, the doppelganger is going to die, or the one that's being copied is going to die?
The one that's being copied.
Okay. See, and that's why I thought, too, that they're there to replace you. Like, wouldn't that be the next logical step? You're going to die so they can take your place.
Well, generally, they see the doppelganger. It's kind of like a ghost or a vision, and then it disappears, and then the person eventually dies. So basically, you're witnessing a person before they die. And actually, now that I think about this, I remember my mom telling me a story about my great-grandmother. And Mom, if you ever listen to this, I'm sorry if I completely butcher this story. But my great-grandmother had many children, some of whom were fighting in World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And she was ironing one day at home, and she saw the body of her son laid out on the ironing board. And then it disappeared. And then some short time later, she got a knock on the door with 2 service members coming to tell her that her son had died. That's kind of what I mean.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call that a doppelganger, but it is definitely a premonition.
Well, in most cases of doppelgangers, that's kind of what it is. It's
really?
less of a sentient being.
And just someone taking the form.
And just something that's taking the form of a person.
Okay.
However, other than being an omen, there's also, like you were thinking, the concept of an evil twin.
Sure. I wasn't even thinking of it in those terms, but yes,
that's the
that makes
easiest way
sense.
to describe it. Like that doppelganger is not there to foreshadow your death, but basically just to fuck up your life.
Right.
So they wreak havoc. They pretend to be you. And many times they will attempt to contact you because they want to give you advice, like malicious advice, lead you astray, potentially lead to your death. And that's why you should never attempt to communicate with your doppelganger. And why I almost never speak to my twin sister. Because she's always trying to lead me astray. I won't
say her name, but poor Colleen's sister.
Just kidding.
That's not very nice.
I just talked to her earlier today. #love you. One thing that came up in my research is people tend to confuse the concept of doppelganger with the concept of bilocation. Bilocation is the psychic ability to project yourself into a second location.
Sure.
And that projection is called a wraith. That's not a doppelganger.
Right. Yep.
The original person, as far as I know, is aware that that second person exists.
Right. Yep.
There's actually a famous example of this that happened in 1622 in New Mexico. The native Hamano people had never encountered Spaniards or Europeans of any kind before. But they were carrying crosses and observing Roman Catholic rituals and even knew an entire liturgy in their native tongue when a Spanish priest named Alonso de Benavides encountered them.
Weird.
Yep, he was super confused, and especially since these people were completely off the European radar until now. Technically, they say they had only recently discovered these people, but like, can you discover someone in their own house? Like me breaking into your house and being like, you didn't exist till now.
I guess it's hard to come up with a separate
it's
term.
The wrong wording.
Yeah.
Anyways, when he communicated with these people whom he had never met before and presumably had never met Europeans or white people of any kind before, they said a lady in blue came along like a bunch of years ago and taught them about Christianity. Like they already know. Somebody was already here. Now, if I was a 17th century Spanish priest, I would have been like, whoa, the Virgin Mary.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Down. Yes. But this guy was more skeptical. He was like, this ain't a bloomin' miracle. I got to figure out what this is. So he returned to Spain and he did a thorough investigation, like asking everybody, like, have you heard of these people before? Have you been there? Like, what's the dealio? It turns out that Sister Mary of Jesus, a nun in Agreda, Spain, had regularly been falling into trances where she had visions of being in North America teaching the gospel. And she was even able to provide highly detailed descriptions of these people, their customs, unique clothing, and even their language, despite never having heard of them or been to North America before.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So she couldn't have learned it from somebody else, and that is bilocation. She is aware that there is a form of her going on to another location.
So I don't know if you'll have the answer to this, but what is the difference between this and astral projecting? It's kind of the same idea, the same concept.
I don't know much about astral projecting, but I always thought that in astral projecting, you're moving on to another plane of existence.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah.
Whereas by location, it seems like you're just going to another location
okay.
on Earth.
So, and then one other question. When you describe the wraith, is the wraith the manifestation, like the spiritual manifestation that you're becoming when you're going to a second place? Or are you just called a wraith when you're able to do that?
It's the second person.
Okay, so the lady in blue that appeared to these natives was the wraith.
Yes.
If you're to believe
so
this.
Like the lady in Spain, not a wraith. Her projection, wraith.
Right.
Yeah. Doppelgangers, not the same. You don't know about your doppelganger. You don't know they exist. They're a completely separate being from you. They just happen to also be you.
Right.
On the surface, this all kind of seems like garbage to me, like just a bad urban legend. I mean,
the doppelgangers as a whole, or
the concept of it seems to me like an urban legend, especially when you get into the like omens of death part. It seems less like a doppelganger and more of like a ghost.
Yeah, that's true. More spiritual rather than like aliens or something.
Right. So, I mean, not too spooky.
Hey, don't say not too spooky though, because personally, and I'm just going to butt in here and say, the concept of doppelgangers is one of the things that terrifies me the most.
Well, you interrupted me too soon.
I'm sorry.
I was just about to say, one of the scariest things in a horror movie is when somebody is looking in the mirror and their reflection does something that they didn't do.
Right.
That is doppelganger.
Yeah. No, that makes total sense.
Oh, yes. And that shit's spooky, man. Can you like even imagine somebody out there pretending to be you? They look exactly like you. They're living your life. They're talking to your friends, but they're not you.
I have...
Like, what if you did something, you went to go hang out with your friends and they were like, we never want to see you again.
Or like you were
in our bathtub.
Yeah, you were just here and you slapped my girlfriend or something.
Right. That it's a scary concept, but to me, still not super believable. Spooky, but not believable.
I don't necessarily think it's believable, but if it were, that would be one of the scariest things I could imagine.
Right. Well, here's where I'm about to blow your mind. There have been dozens, if not hundreds, of instances of alleged doppelgangers occurring. Most of the stories that I found, you can't corroborate them because it's a person seeing their own doppelganger.
And usually just from one source, like one statement.
Exactly. But I found a few that were particularly convincing to me. One that is like particularly interesting is Percy Shelley, a.k.a. Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein. Her husband.
Yep.
On June 23rd, 1822, he started having visions of his house collapsing in a flood. One day soon after that, he was on the terrace of his house when he noticed there was somebody else there. He turned around and it was him. And his doppelganger walked up to him, looked him in the eye, and said, "How long do you mean to be content?" I don't necessarily know what that means. Like, how long you planning on being happy for?
My interpretation when you said that was, so how much longer do you think you can keep up the charade? Like something like that. Like making him think he's the doppelganger. Right.
Now, that whole thing is creepy, but if he had been having visions previously, you could imagine that his doppelganger was just a figment of his imagination.
Right. In his head. Yep.
But there was an acquaintance named Jane Williams who also saw the doppelganger around the same time, but on a different day. She was standing on that same terrace looking down, and she saw Percy walking past a window, like away from her, past a window towards
somewhere else.
Oh, yeah. Right. Yes. There's nothing strange about that. But seconds later, she saw him coming from the same direction, walk past the same window into the same direction. So basically, she saw the same thing happen exactly twice in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
You could assume that he just like sprinted around and then walked past as like a joke. But according to Mary Shelley, there's no way he could have done that because the way he was walking was blocked by a 20-foot wall. So he would have to climb a 20-foot wall, drop down, sprint back around the house, and casually walk past the window again in a matter of seconds.
Okay.
And even then, he'd have to have super speed. But because I said earlier, when somebody else sees your doppelganger, it's usually an omen of death. He drowned in a bay in Italy on July 8th.
The acquaintance did?
Nope, Percy Shelley.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, in this case, the doppelganger was omen of death.
So when someone else sees the doppelganger, then you die.
Yes. Or that seems to be the pattern.
Interesting, because I thought it was when you see your own doppelganger, that's when you're about to die.
No, it seems to be when somebody else sees it. And I kind of feel like it's less of a doppelganger and more of like a vision of the last time you'll see this person. You're being allowed to view this person one last time before they die. That's kind of what it feels like. Like in the case of my great-grandmother, she sees her son.
Sure, yeah. I almost feel like they should be two separate things. This kind of like timeline type thing where it's like a weird gap in time and you see the future or see the past or something like that versus the evil twin thing. I feel like they're just two completely separate things.
Yes and no. The evil twin thing, I couldn't find any evidence of. I think that's the scariest.
And that's I guess the reason I like that version so much is just because it's the subject of so many horror movies and like books and stuff.
I think that one is harder to remain mysterious.
But at the same time, it's not, though, because like if they were able to get rid of the original and the copy takes over, then like how would that ever be found out?
That's a good right. True.
I don't know. I'm just saying they're two similar things, but also very different.
Right. I mean, sorry to disappoint you. Most of these are not evil twin stories.
That's too bad.
It's really hard to find. But here's another story suggesting that doppelgangers are not evil or ghosts, but they're actually time travelers or alternate dimension.
That's what I was thinking when you were kind of describing this.
Yeah. So a man named Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, I'm going to call him Johann. He was an 18th century poet in Germany, and he was having an affair with a young lady. As he was traveling to her house, he saw a man dressed in a gray suit trimmed in gold. And the man looked at him and then walked a couple steps and then disappeared. 8 years later, Johann was traveling on that exact same road to visit the exact same lady. Is it an affair if it's lasted for 8 years? At that point, she's your girlfriend.
Well, yeah, unless he's still with the original wife or girlfriend.
Valid point, right. Anyways, as he was traveling on that same road, he looked down and he noticed that he was wearing the exact same gray suit trimmed in gold that man was wearing earlier.
It's so weird to like remember that exact insignificant instance.
Well, I think
unless
it was
scared him.
In the fact that the man vanished in front of him.
Yeah.
You'd think, though, he might have recognized his own features a little bit. I don't know. This
was his doppelganger, though. But
that's the assumption. And this is another one. There's no corroborators. It's just his story tends to be told a lot.
Okay. So he didn't even notice it possibly looking like him. He just saw a spirit be there and then vanish twice, 8 years apart.
No. It didn't appear the second time. He was the person wearing the suit the second time.
I see. Okay.
So it was kind of, I guess you could say a premonition from the future, or maybe somebody from an alternate dimension beamed down.
I mean, I guess it's kind of like the opposite of deja vu, too, where it's like, it is a premonition. So it's like, weird, I've experienced this before. Wait, I literally have. And then you remember it.
Yeah.
Weird.
I wonder, they never mention him seeing himself in the carriage traveling down the road.
Right.
That would have made it more interesting, methinks. Okay. Those two stories are good. They're fascinating.
Sure.
But this is the most interesting, and this one is actually the most well-documented, and it has a lot of witnesses story of a doppelganger. This is the story of Emilie Sagee, and I was originally going to do this whole episode about her because it's super interesting, but there's just not enough information to make it like a full episode.
Okay.
So this is going to have to be enough. Emilie Sagee was a French woman teaching at a girls' school in Latvia in 1845.
Okay.
It was just a small school. I think there were probably like 50 kids, 40 or 50 girls. One day, she's teaching her kids in a regular classroom. It's got the blackboard in the front. The kids are all in desks behind her. As she was writing, her exact double appeared right next to her, copying the exact same movements she was doing, only the double didn't have a piece of chalk.
Weird.
And it looked exactly like her. It wasn't like a ghostly image. It was her next to her. There were two of her.
Just one without the chalk.
Yes. And 13 students witnessed this.
Wow.
And were able to corroborate it. However, Emilie Sagee was unlucky because her doppelganger kept showing up throughout her life. It wasn't just a one and done thing like all of the other stories.
Right.
And almost every time there were witnesses.
Huh.
In fact, she never actually saw her own doppelganger. But it was clearly following her around because for the next 16 years of her life, she was fired from 18 different teaching jobs for just being too darn spooky.
Wow. That's crazy.
Like, it happened at 18 different jobs. So that's crazy. But here's another instance of her doppelganger showing up. And this one had the most witnesses at 42 people witnessing this. The next year, 1846, so the year after the original appearance, the entire school was sat at long tables inside, kind of like Hogwarts.
I was just going to say
that.
Yeah.
The whole school was sitting at these long tables. And right outside, Emilie was picking flowers out of the school garden, and all of the kids could see her. There was this big window.
Okay.
So, the kids are all sitting there. If they look out the window, they see her picking flowers. She's there.
Sure.
They know she's there.
Yeah.
As the students are like working on their stuff, the teacher temporarily leaves the room to go talk to the headmistress.
And this is a separate teacher.
Yep. So it's one teacher teaching a class. Emilie's outside picking flowers.
Got it.
So the teacher leaves to go talk to the headmistress. And when she left, Emilie appeared in the chair. And at the exact same time, the real Emilie could be seen picking flowers outside. So 42 people could see her both in front of them at the head of the tables and outside the window. 2 of the students even went up to go touch it to see if it was real. Like, it was just sitting there blankly staring.
Creepy.
Yep. Apparently there was some sort of weird resistance when they got close to her, so they couldn't actually touch her. This happened several more times, and she got fired from that job too, because...
Too spooky.
Yeah. Which one are they supposed to pay? Which one earns the salary?
Wait, so my question is, what is the goal of this doppelganger?
That's my problem with all of this. I understand.
The time one makes sense if it's just like kind of a glitch or like just a weird time travel type thing.
I can understand that being like a ghost.
Yeah, whether you believe it or not, there's a point to it.
I don't understand the point of Emilie Sagee's unless hers was legitimately an evil twin trying to fuck up her life.
Yeah, it's just like it would have to be some kind of like spirit or like otherworldly type thing if it's able to appear and then disappear.
Right.
So what's it trying to do? Is it having trouble staying like solid long enough to...
Or was there like some sort of cross between universes?
Sure.
People were able to see. It's I can't think of anything more eerie than somebody who looks exactly like me appearing next to me and doing exactly what I'm doing, but like without the tools. Like writing next to me, but without chalk. And she apparently was following exactly the same motions and movements. So it was...
It's almost like an AI learning or something like that.
Yeah, it could be anything. But almost every occurrence has witnesses and corroborators.
And you said that she never even witnessed her own doppelganger. No. So, like, how would she be able to make this all up if she didn't even see it?
Right. I mean, they would all have to be in cahoots.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, if they're doing it together, but unlikely if she had 18 different jobs.
Right. So that one's the most interesting to me. But what about this one? What about Abraham Lincoln? Hear about this one? Hear about this one?
I've heard that the White House is haunted with his ghost. That's a famous story.
Nah. This is how this one goes. You'd trust Lincoln, wouldn't you?
I mean...
You'd trust what Lincoln tells you.
More than Trump, yeah.
Right, but more than any like random dude off the street, right? Like if somebody was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I saw my doppelganger," and Lincoln said, "Hey, I saw my doppelganger,"
That's
believe
true.
Lincoln.
That's true. Yes, I would.
Okay. Well, on the night of his inauguration, he looked into a full-length mirror and he noticed that he had 2 reflections, which, wigged him out. But obviously, he was like, "I'm tired. I just got inaugurated. This is my first day as president.
Yeah.
I'm just going to go lay down." So he laid down in bed, but as he laid down, he saw his doppelganger in the room again, and it looked exactly like him, only it was about 5 shades paler and it looked more sickly.
Hold on, I have to interrupt. Are these coming like from his diaries or something?
This
Like
is
where
from
is
his
this?
wife.
Okay. Post-mortem, like after he died?
That I wasn't there.
Well, I know, but I'm just wondering, like if these stories actually came from Abraham Lincoln, because I feel like I should have heard about this before.
Well, okay. He told his wife, who originally assumed that it meant he would be elected to a second term, because she kind of took it as an omen, like there's 2 of you. This is your inauguration night. This is an omen. You're gonna be lucky.
Okay.
You're gonna go to a second term. But after thinking about it for a while, she determined that one of them was way paler and more sickly looking than the real Lincoln. So
Yeah.
it was an omen of death, and of course, he never made it to a second term. So you trust him, huh? Honest Lincoln? Is he honest?
more
Honest Abe.
Honest Abe. More than most presidents. Yes, I guess my only question still is like, did she make this up? Like, why? What would she have to gain from it?
Well, yeah, what would she have to gain from it? Because Abraham Lincoln was already incredibly famous.
That's
and he's
true.
already well loved. Like, he doesn't need more PR.
That's true. It's just there's always with like, especially with U.S. presidents, there's always like a folklore like surrounding the big ones. I've just never heard that before, and he's like, probably the second most famous U.S. president. So
second,
after Washington. There's a lot of those old tales of chopping down the cherry tree or whatever.
But that's
and the
provably false.
I know. That's what I mean, though. Like, there's all those tales that are just literally fake stories.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if this is a fake story.
It could be, but why do you have to bring down the mood?
I'm not.
The room
Sorry.
right now?
I'm just... For those that are listening that don't know me too well, I love trivia. Specifically U.S. history and presidential trivia, and I feel like I should have heard that before.
Well, you
so
didn't,
that's why,
which means I'm smarter and better at research.
Good job,
and more beautiful.
Proud of you.
So after I found a lot more stories. These were the most interesting ones. All of the other ones were, omens of death. So I was trying to think of I'm sure there's an explanation for this. There's got to be some scientific explanation.
For the Emily one, or wait, what?
For doppelgangers in general.
Oh, okay.
What is it that science is saying? It has been posited, and honestly, it's probably true, that a doppelganger is a hallucination caused by a malfunction in your brain.
Okay.
Basically, a tumor or some other issue can cause your brain to lose its perception of being grounded in right now.
Right.
Wouldn't say lose its perception of time, but lose your perception of self-grounding, self-awareness, I suppose.
Yeah.
And in that case, you would lose the sense of being in your body.
And also, if that were to happen, I bet you're more susceptible to having a stroke or a seizure or something.
Right. So there was a story of a man who did not intend to commit suicide. He survived, but he jumped out of a 4th floor window because he saw himself standing next to the bed, and he also saw himself in the bed. So he was transferring back and forth from the person standing next to the bed and the person laying in the bed, and he couldn't decide which one he was. He just wanted it to stop, so he jumped out of a window, and they found a tumor in his brain.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm.
That's creepy.
Yes. And it was entirely after analyzing the situation and talking to him, he wasn't trying to kill himself.
Right.
He was trying to break the cycle.
Yeah. It's just a weird response. What do I do? What do I do? And then just try to get out like it's a dream or something.
And it wasn't like he was laying in the bed and then he was standing up and then he was laying in the bed and then he was standing up. He was actually his consciousness felt like he was standing, staring at himself, and then instantly he would flicker in bed, staring up at himself.
Yeah, so it's he's both at the same time.
Yes.
Almost. Yeah.
So that was caused, I believe he had a tumor in his brain, and he was off of antipsychotics for a while. So clearly point towards science, doppelgangers being a hallucination. They've also done tests where volunteers will allow their brains to be probed with electrode-y things while they're still awake.
Mm-hmm.
Because stimulating certain parts of the brain can cause an out-of-body experience, which, think about it, near-death experiences. A lot of people who have near-death experiences see themselves floating out of their bodies and see themselves from above. Maybe that is a case of some sort of electrostimulus in your brain during a traumatic event. I made that up. I didn't read that.
Well, it's literally whatever it is, it's something we don't understand. So your guess is as good as most.
Right. But I argue it's not the same thing as a doppelganger.
Not really.
In these instances, you are aware that there are two of you. You are aware that you used to be the other person, or that you exist at the same time.
But the point of the doppelganger is the uncanny feeling of like, that's me, but like, that's not me.
Exactly. Like Emilie Sagee.
Right.
There were two of her, but she had no notion that this was going on. That's as close to an evil twin, I think, as you're going to get.
Mm-hmm.
And those scientists, they don't explain how other people would be able to see your doppelganger. The only explanation I have for that is that either a person saw someone who looked a lot like you,
or they were just confused.
Or they were confused, right? Or it was a ghost.
or it was an alien.
The thing is, that wouldn't make sense in Emilie Sagee's case because all 42 students were sitting in the same room.
That's true. But there's also, what's it called? Mob mentality, or like whatever that is. Like, when it's easier to believe something when you're in a group setting.
Right. But even girls going up to try to touch it, there had to have been more than one person that saw it.
In the second instance, yes. I was thinking with the first one with the chalkboard, like maybe another teacher came in and was like playing a prank on Emilie or something.
Because she disappeared. Like she vanished. They specifically made a point of saying she did the motions and then vanished.
Just unexplainable. That one, see, even to me, even though that one is closer to an evil twin type story, it's still not, though. It's at the same time, it seems like it's kind of like a weird glitch in time space.
Sorry to harsh your mellow, but it really feels like the evil twin doesn't really exist.
No, it's just a movie thing. Speaking of, though, I have a couple movie recommendations about doppelgangers, if that's cool.
Yeah. Just
very quickly, because if you're more interested in the evil twin type doppelganger, I would watch The Double with Jesse Eisenberg. That one's pretty good. And there's also a movie I just watched a week or two ago called Cam. It's about a cam girl, but like there's a weird double of her that takes her life, and it's more of an AI type doppelganger thing. But it was interesting. Kind of like a B horror movie.
All right, to wrap up my doppelganger speech.
Wrap it up.
As with most of these kinds of phenomena, science is able to recreate and explain mere aspects of it, but there are crucial pieces missing. And this leads me to not one, but three conclusions. 1, ghosts.
Okay.
That pretty much answers everything.
No, it doesn't, though. Sorry.
Ghost shows up, ghost writes on the chalkboard.
Yeah, but why would it look like you? Because a ghost is a dead spirit of someone else, so why would it look like?
What if it's like a malicious shapeshifty ghost?
But ghosts don't shapeshift.
Okay, tell me in the laws of nature where that's written.
I know,
down.
But I'm just saying, in all lore, ghosts don't shapeshift. Like that's just another type of being.
Demons.
Maybe, but they kind of possess bodies. So.
Okay, 1 is ghosts.
Okay.
2, the infinite universe theory. Perhaps the people of one universe are able to travel between universes and for some reason are attracted to their alternate universe counterparts.
Yeah. I think that makes more sense.
That makes more sense than ghosts?
No, I mean if you're to believe that theory, that line of thought, it makes more sense, especially with the story about Emilie, why she would appear and disappear, where it's not like you're being attracted and communicating with your separate self from an alternate universe. It's more like other people are witnessing the universes converging, but then like diverging.
Yeah, that's what I meant when I wrote that. And my third theory, time travel. But that really only makes sense in the case of like Johann.
Right. Certain circumstances.
Right.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I would even feel comfortable grouping all of these stories together, to be honest.
That's what I was saying earlier.
I know.
They're
yes,
different.
Right. They are all instances. They've all been referred to as doppelgangers or instances.
I don't doubt that. I'm just saying there should be a separate term for the different types of doubles.
Right. I feel like in the modern sense of doppelganger, evil twin, I was not able to find any information.
Right. It's literally just a movie thing.
I know, but that's the spookiest one. But
even these stories are just as spooky, or not just as spooky, but very spooky, because it's like, I mean, it's very uncanny, like, to have a double of yourself. So
that's it. Doppelgangers.
Okay.
I guess everyone wants to move on.
Well, I was just gonna say, if you're done, I have a listener story. If you're interested.
I am interested.
This one is from our very good friend Chris. You may know him, host of many podcasts on this network.
Cartoon Boom,
Party in Peril. So obviously you know him, Chris. He sent us this story. He says, so going off episode 1, you two mentioned reoccurring nightmares. I've had one that literally happens only about once a decade, but it's been traumatizing as hell, so I never forget it. I was a kid the first time I had it, and it started like one of those dreams where you feel like you're falling through the bed. But I didn't jerk awake, and I kept slowly falling and feeling like I was passing through something in the dark, and I kept hearing this echoing laughter in the distance, like childish voices laughing from very far away. The thing that stuck out the most was this musical beat, which I know seems very strange, and it was very bassy, something like a drum or a really thick string on a bass guitar, or something being plucked. 3 notes were the same, and then the 4th was deeper, and it would repeat over and over.
Let me know if that's close, Chris.
I imagine it's not. If you've ever seen the movie The Langoliers, which is a Stephen King story, I think it's more like that, where it's like boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, that would be way scarier than da-da-da-da.
Anyways,
Chris, let us know if that was accurate.
Anyway, whatever reason, it would terrify me to the point of panic attacks, even as a child. So fast forward, I have it again as a teenager, but this time things are louder and it lasted longer, and I felt like I was falling deeper. And the laughing was also a lot louder. It's so burned into my memory that I can remember exactly how the room looks when I woke up in it. In my 20s, I'm living in an apartment out on my own in a new state, and it happens again, but this time something had grabbed my ankle and was pulling me downward rather than me sinking through, and the music and the laughter happened again, and it was louder, and the blackness started to give away to what seemed like the very edges of firelight of some kind before I woke up. I haven't had the nightmare again yet in my 30s, but it seriously freaks me out to wonder how it will progress this time. Even just thinking about that bass tune in my head is enough to make me sick to my stomach. And then I will also say that Colleen followed up and asked him if he's ever tried to recreate it, and he said he did try actually recreating it on his bass, but it made him starting to feel sick again. So,
yeah. This one is interesting because we, a while ago, recorded an episode of A Lil Spooky about near-death experiences, and we scrapped it because, honestly, it was kind of boring. Maybe we'll revisit it. But there was one story in there about a near-death experience that wasn't, I floated out of my body towards a bright light. It was, I sunk down into hell, somebody grabbing my ankle, and heard obnoxious, evil laughter.
right.
And that's what it kind of sounds like.
Yeah.
Maybe he dies. Maybe he's got sleep apnea, and you die every time you have this dream.
Well, and actually, I forgot to mention this during our talk about doppelgangers, too. But with Emilie, she never saw her doppelganger, but what if when she died, that was when she finally saw the doppelganger, if it was kind of an evil twin type thing, or more of like a premonition of death type thing.
What if it was a past life thing?
Maybe.
Or a premonition thing? You know what it seems to me, as a mental professional myself, clearly, one of my biggest fears is going insane. Like, that's one fear that I've had since I was probably in middle school. And it seems to me that dream is like, it at the time, it probably would feel like you are going insane.
Chris's dream?
Yeah. Like you are immersed in this weird bass noise with weird noises. Somebody's dragging you down.
Well, and you kind of interrupted my point earlier, too. But I was going to say, this seems, every time he has this dream, it seems to escalate. So at one point, I mean, he kind of alluded to his most recent dream that he was like on the edge of hell or whatever, possibly. Compared to Emilie, it's kind of the same thing where like you finally meet the face of your doppelganger when you're on your deathbed. So maybe it's going to escalate and escalate and escalate. And if you're to assume this is hell or something like that, sorry, Chris, you may be going to hell. I don't know, but you'll find out on your deathbed, maybe.
Yeah, UK? You want, you want to go for waffles sometime?
When it was just like my dream that I talked about in our first episode, too, where I'm afraid, like, on my deathbed, am I going to see that deer? Like, is it going to finally catch up to me in my dreams? I don't know.
I don't know that I've ever had a dream or nightmare where I'm anywhere other than Earth. Like, I've never been in, like, a weird celestial plane or in hell or in heaven. I'm always, like, on a dank alley in Green Bay. Or, like, somebody's basement or something. What does that say about me?
Well, but you've never had a dream where you're falling?
No.
You've never had a dream where you're falling and you jerk yourself awake?
No. I have had, like, the hypnic jerk. You know, that feeling, like, the jerk yourself awake thing? But it's never been like because I feel like I'm falling in a dream. It's because I feel like I'm falling off my bed.
Oh.
I've never had the falling dream. I have multiple times had the falling out teeth dream all the time.
But that's still in dank Green Bay.
Yeah, or like my bed. That is.
Well, we digress though.
Yes.
That's a completely different story. And actually, that is definitely an episode I would like to visit someday, is kind of analyzing different types of nightmares. But maybe someday in the future we can talk about that.
Yeah. In the meantime, Chris, let us know if that helped.
I hope you don't have that dream again soon.
I
or
do too.
Ever, really, honestly.
Right.
That sounds scary.
Yeah, I would not like it.
But if you would like to hear us talk about your spooky experience.
About anything.
About anything. Dreams, cryptids, aliens, ghosts, whatever you want.
Send us a story about crimes if you want. As long as you don't mind them getting read out loud.
And if you want to
do crimes,
you can do crimes, because we can say you're anonymous or whatever if you don't want your name to be spoken. But send us a DM on any of our socials: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or at NerdSloth HQ.
And you can email us at contact@nerdsloth.com. We
will be back in your ears next Friday for an episode by me.
Yeah. And I have another one lined up too.
Yeah. So we got a lot of spooks coming at you.
Spooky stocked. All right. Well, hopefully you enjoyed this episode and you will hear from us next week.
And we love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
Presented by NerdSloth,
a place for lazy nerds.
If you like what you heard, consider donating at patreon.com/nerdsloth so we can continue bringing you quality shows. Be sure to also leave us a review and share your favorite episodes and clips on social media. If you're looking for more content, visit us at nerdsloth.com.